welcome to Vest Top 5. I'm Vest Guy. Today I'm talking about one of my favorite actors of all time, and that's Denzel Washington. It was hard to make this list because he has a lot of good movies. He has, almost all of his films are great. Even the ones that are weak, he's usually the standout part of the film. There is an honorable mention that I wanted to place on this list, and that honorable mention is a film that was directed by Tony Scott called Crimson Tide. It's a great film with Gene Hackman. This is a film produced by Jerry Bruckheimer. I wanted to put it on this list, but sadly I'm going to have to exclude it from the list. So we're going to go straight into the 5 best films of his career, thus far. So number 5 is a film also directed by Tony Scott, curiously enough, and that movie is Man on Fire. This was released in 2004, and is an action thriller revenge film. And the film tells the story of Denzel Washington playing a bodyguard, and he is protecting a small little girl played by Dakota Fanning. And the movie tells you right from the get-go that this is taking place in a very dangerous city, in Mexico City, where a lot of kidnappings take place. And this girl is from a rich family. One of the parents is played by Mark Anthony. I don't know why they chose Mark Anthony to play the father of Dakota Fanning, because he looks like Dakota Fanning, but he does a good job with what he's given. And Denzel is playing a guy he has layers to him. He's an alcoholic, he has a troubled past, and he's taking this job. He's not really too happy about taking it at first, but the relationship that unfolds between him and Dakota Fanning's character in terms of the friendship that he bonds with her, it's so well done, and it's, you would think it's not an important part of a revenge thriller kind of film, but it works because the character played by Dakota Fanning gets kidnapped, and now we have Denzel going on a revenge spree, and this movie is extremely violent. It holds nothing back when it comes to violence, gore, and action. And you also see Denzel Washington talking Spanish, and curiously enough, he does a pretty decent job, even though it's not a language that he speaks. But it is a pretty good job, convincing job speaking Spanish in Mexico City. The only thing I don't like about Man on Fire, and is the only reason it's not higher on my list, is the editing and cinematography that is used on this film. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. In certain chaotic scenes where it's trying to show you that this is a dangerous city, he uses a lot of really quick pans and sharp editing and weird color tones. And again, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. He even uses those techniques in regular conversation scenes where it feels too chaotic. And I think those type of editing techniques can be used when there's an action sequence to make certain scenes look more tense, not when there's a regular conversation going on. That's the only reason this film is not higher on my list. But Denzel gives a great performance. Everyone gives a great performance in this movie, and it's one of the better films from Tony Scott, which Denzel would collaborate with him in other films in the future. So now we're going into number 4. Number 4 is a film directed by Ridley Scott, and the movie is American Gangster. This film also stars Russell Crowe, and it's a bit long, but I love this film. It's extremely well directed, and this is a type of film that I don't want to reveal too much about, because it is a crime film that you have to sit from the beginning to end and explore what's going on with these characters. Unlike Man on Fire, this is shot more linear. There's no weirder editing techniques. This is also kind of a time period film. It's not taking place in modern times, it's taking place in the past. And again, I can't stress this enough, but Denzel gives an amazing performance playing the lead villain. And it plays a very likable villain. There's times when you're watching it where you're kind of like taking sides with Denzel's character just because of the way he presents himself, even though you're technically supposed to be rooting for Russell Crowe's character. It's a great movie. I highly recommend it. You can find it on DVD and Blu-ray. Same thing with Man on Fire. Number 3 is a movie directed by Spike Lee, and that movie is Inside Man. This movie also stars Clive Owen, and I really like this movie. I haven't seen it in a while, but I remember when it first came out in 2006, I saw it in the theater, and I was impressed by how a simple robbery, heist, hostage film can be done so differently and so fresh with a lot of twists and turns. And it's in part not just from the acting from both actors, but also the script. I don't know who penned the script, but I know it was directed by Spike Lee, and Spike Lee has a specific style of filming, and he uses some techniques that work for some people and some that don't work for other people. I've talked to people who don't like specific scenes in this movie. Like there's one scene where he uses, it looks like a snorri cam, but it's a sequence where Denzel Washington is running from a trailer to the bank after he finds a specific thing that happens, and he uses a weird technique where the actor is on his knees and he's rolling in, and people think it's a really cheap gimmick, and he does use this techniques a lot in other films, but for me it works because it's a Spike Lee style. But anyway, the story is pretty much someone's taking hostage of a bank, and that's Clive Owen's character, and Denzel Washington is one of the chief investigators, and he's trying to negotiate with him. It's never boring, and it has a really good twist. It's curious that no one mentions this movie a lot on their top list of Denzel Washington movies, because it's very well done. I would put this also as one of my top 5 heist films. I would also suggest, starting from the first frame, pay attention to what Clive Owen is saying, because everything that he says pays off at the end. It's extremely important. You have to pay attention to what's going on. It's not the type of movie that you just play in the background while you're doing something else. This is a movie you're supposed to pay attention to. Same thing with Denzel Washington's character. Number 2 is also a movie directed by Spike Lee, curiously enough, and that movie is Malcolm X. This movie is extremely long. It's over 3 hours. It's not a movie that you just sit and watch. I remember seeing it in parts in school many years ago, and at the time I didn't appreciate the film. I thought it was boring and long and redundant, but watching it now, it's extremely well done. It's a type of movie that doesn't follow the 3-act structure. It ignores that, and it does a loyal representation of who Malcolm X was from the beginning, middle, and end. It doesn't exclude anything. I'm pretty sure it excluded some things and dramatized some things for the sake of telling the story, but you're seeing early Malcolm X when he was young, when he didn't know anything about the religion that he would eventually embark in, the type of civil rights movement that he would go on to. But you see him really young, then you see him going to jail, you see him meeting his mentor, and then eventually becoming the leader that he eventually became. Denzel Washington did an amazing job transforming himself, looking and talking very similar to real life Malcolm X. There's some scenes that actually look identical to what happened in real life if you go online and find old footage. It's definitely worth owning, in my opinion, on DVD or Blu-ray, whichever format you can find. I really like it. Of course, it's not a movie that you sit and watch, you have to be in the mood to watch this type of biographical historical film, which I was also going to put as an honorable mention, another film that he did called The Hurricane, which is another biographical film that you should check out, which is about 2.5 hours long. But that also didn't make it onto this list. So what made it to number 1? So this was tough. I looked at his whole filmography, and my number 1, which is actually the first, it wasn't the first Denzel Washington movie, but it was one of the first ones that I think I saw either in theaters or it was the first that I owned on DVD, and I think that was Training Day. So Training Day is my number 1 film. It's the one that gave him the Academy Award, and even though, again, he's the villain very much like he was in American Gangster, it's curious, like he does really good job playing villains. Not to say that he doesn't do a good job playing the protagonist, but he has an appeal when he's playing the villain that you're always kind of closely siding with him, even though you know he's wrong. He's it's a type of like swagger that I can't explain. But the story in Training Day is that Ethan Hawke plays like a rookie cop who transfers to a new city, and he's a partner of Denzel Washington's character, and he's going on the ride along of the first day, and he's learning how it works in this new city that is a lot more crime infested than what he's used to. He has to get accustomed to this new lifestyle. So he quickly learns that Denzel's character is a crooked cop. He doesn't go by the rules, and it spirals out of control. This is a movie that I've seen several times. I own it on Blu-ray, and it definitely does have his best performance, especially in the third act. Well, actually in the climax. In the third act of the climax, where you're seeing Denzel just going berserk, and Ethan Hawke gets not mentioned much in this film, but he does a really good job too. He gets a beating, both physically and psychologically, in the character that he's playing. So that was my number 1. All these films are great, and again, his whole list of films are really good. but these are the top 5 that I consider his most remarkable. So anyway, guys, I hope you enjoyed this top 5. I'm Best Guy. If you have any questions, comments, or suggestions, and actually let me know which one is your favorite Denzel Washington movie. Is there one that didn't get to this list? Let me know your opinions on the comment section down below. And this was Best Top 5. And until next time, bye.